Hey everybody, this is episode 5 with Derek Armstrong. He is one of the brewers over at Three Heads Brewery here in Rochester, New York. Derek and I have known each other about a year now. It's really the first time that Derek and I have sat down and actually talked to each other. We know each other through a mutual friend. It's usually just kind of go out, grab drinks, hang out with everybody. It was cool to hear Derek's story, kind of how he got into beer. I had no idea Derek had started the process of opening a brewery here just outside of Rochester, which he gets into. Talks about some beers he's come up with recently, some things he's curious about for the future. Derek and I will definitely be doing this again. I think the podcast next time will be a little bit different. I think we talked for probably an hour after this podcast just about life and where we were at and stuff like that, which is really cool because, like I said, this is really the first time I've sat down with Derek, so I'm excited. If you like beer, talk, this is the conversation for you. Derek's one of the best brewers that I know. If you've been to Three Heads, you've definitely tried one of his beers or a creation of his, I'm sure. So please let me know what you think. If you enjoy this podcast, as always, let us know. And Derek, go see Derek at Three Heads and have one of his fine beers. I've tried a bunch of his beers, and they're all really good. So you can't go wrong. Strong Arm. If you don't like IPAs and you've ever been interested in them, try it. I've recommended it to a few people who are like on the border with the IPAs, and they love it. So give it a try. Three Heads Brewery. Go, check it out, have fun, great place, great people, can't go wrong. And we're going to get into this with Derek Armstrong.
Yeah, if it's horrible, I mean, we can go in the back room, we could go back in the brewery, whatever,
I don't know, right now, it sounds alright. As long as we talk loud,
alright.
give it a shot. We can always move around too if we have to.
Yeah.
That's why I got this, it's nice and mobile.
Yeah, that's sweet, man. That's set up.
Alright, so this beer is, we're just going to roll right into it. We're at Three Heads, Derek Armstrong. He is, alright, you're not the head brewer, you are the...
We'll just call me a brewer.
Alright, cool. So
I came from a head brewer position, and I'm kind of back in the sweet spot right where I want to be. I'm creating recipes, working on the floor, getting my hands dirty every day, doing the hard work that pays off, and then
that's awesome.
reaping the rewards and drinking them down.
Dude, you for sure are reaping the rewards because, you started out, your first beer here was Strong Arm, right?
Yep.
That was like your first kind of small batch. It's obviously doing really well.
Well, we just kicked off with that. We swung for the fences, That was before we had the small system.
Okay.
Recently, we did acquire a 1-barrel system from, it used to be Rock Brewing, but I purchased it, and then eventually I sold it to Three Heads. But we can jump back to that.
All right, we'll go back to that. So,
But
you have the Strong Arm.
with the Strong Arm, yep, we went right into it, and started out pretty well. We did a 30-barrel batch just to test the waters, hone it in, get it exactly how we wanted it. Then we grew to a 60-barrel batch. That was when we decided, maybe we'll start canning it.
Yeah.
So we did a small can release.
Okay.
And then from there, we've been doing full production 90-barrel batches, like every 5 weeks or so.
Dude, that's
4 or 5 weeks.
That's cool. So what goes into the bigger batch, the smaller batch? Like how does it different? How do you know your ratios right off the bat, or is it just
Well, you gotta feel it out. So basically, on our big system, that's what Three Heads is. We have a 30-barrel brew house. We have 5 90-barrel fermenters and 1 30-barrel fermenter. So when we brew a batch, we're producing 30 barrels.
So he could have come said hi. The more the merrier,
Yeah, exactly.
That's
He's in the brewing industry. Maybe we'll get him over here.
Shit, all right. Here we go.
So when we brew a batch on the big system, our main system, we're looking at 30 barrels. So as I mentioned, we have those 90-barrel tanks. So that's going to take 3 turns or 3 batches to fill one of those. So we do have the 130 barrel fermenter. We leave that for something that's usually going to be tasting room only, or if we're kind of trying a new batch. So my second main big beer was the Guava Sutra IPA, milkshake IPA,
which I'm currently drinking, and I had the first batch too, which they're both phenomenal.
Yeah, so when we made that first batch, we really wanted to, emphasize flavor, really go to the max. So it was heavy in vanilla, and the hops were even a little more present, and we used guava puree, and you almost even got like a pinkish hue out of it. And with this batch, we toned that back a little bit. We wanted, the guava flavor and aroma, but we lost so much yield on the first batch because there was so much puree that just wouldn't settle out.
Oh, really?
So we had to find a happy medium where we could still get great flavors, and we kind of wanted to make it a little more drinkable. I was getting a lot of, it's a really good beer. I don't know if I could have more than 1 or 2.
That's what I was just gonna say. I think it was like a 2 beer thing for me because like it was just super sweet. It was like thick, creamy, almost like a milkshake. It had that feel to it, and you had the perfect name for it.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So,
yeah, I mean, I think we got that, and then this batch, we're still perfecting. No recipe is ever officially complete, unless you're like talking like Heady Topper or Russian River, Pliny, it's going to take one of those. Those will always be the same. But at Three Heads, we like to switch it up. We like to perfect our recipes.
Right, and like that's the thing, just with anything in general, you always got to change it and mix it up because tastes are different. I'm sure the puree you get is a little bit different every time.
Oh yeah,
definitely. Using more fresh stuff and a big bulk like that. I mean, it's going to change, especially the hops too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, that's another point. I mean, you're right on. I mean, even our malt batch, we get specs on our malt. So we get a big grain delivery, and from each delivery, we're looking at different kernel size, different specs, different even flavors in the most minute sense sometimes.
So do you taste all that stuff? I know you're obviously physically looking at it and touching it, but do you taste it too? Like, how do you?
Definitely. We're always trying to taste it, especially when it comes to our base grain. We have to know what we're working with because that's going to go into 100% of our beers.
Right, that's very true.
Luckily, they make it easy on us. We do get a spec sheet, so we can look at the numbers and compare, moisture ratio, diastatic power. We can look at the boring statistics, and we'll get a good sense of how each delivery compares to each other. But of course, we have to taste it.
Makes sense. All right, so now let's jump back a little bit. So kind of talk a little bit about Three Heads. What about how'd you get into brewing? Did you go to college? Like obviously there's no brewing for a college for brewing, I would assume.
Yeah, so it's a pretty interesting story. I mean, I'm definitely not the first, and I won't be the last. So I went to the University of Buffalo, and I got my Bachelor of Science degree for environmental studies. I minored in geography, and I was planning on going, the environmental route, and thinking about taking a civil service exam, working for DC or something like that, a state job. And I love that, and I love my studies, but when I got out of college, I was struggling to find work. I ended up serving and eventually bartending. All the while, I had been a very avid Hoden brewer. I really, it almost took over. I lived with a bunch of guys. 3 or 4 of us were very dedicated. So you'd always be smelling something in the kitchen. Somebody was brewing, somebody was up to something. So got really serious and actually began the process of opening a brewery.
Oh, did you really? I didn't know that. I know you've talked about you wanted to, but I didn't know you actually even started the process.
Yeah, so I was working with 3 other guys, some of the closest friends in my life, and we were gonna go for it. We started acquiring equipment. We had a location. This was a long process though, so this was this was basically from 2011 or 12 up until, the dream never died per se, but everyone's life took a different turn, One of the guys had a kid, that changes things. One's basically an alchemist, and
Is his name Brian?
oh yes, the one and only BVB, Brian Van Buren.
Oh, nice. I met him. Matt introduced me to him at one of the shows in Rochester, like at RIT.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh no shit! All right.
So yep, so just some of the greatest people, and we went for it. We really did. We went to the town board. We were looking out in Manchester. We were farm brewery legislation. It just came through, so we really, we thought we were gonna do it. This was kind of maybe a year or two before the brewery boom really took off, especially in Rochester.
Yeah. So did you guys have like investors, or you guys just were doing it on your own?
Yeah, so we planned on starting small. So that was when we got a chance to talk to some of the local brewers, get some perspective.
Yeah.
And actually, I talked to Three Heads back in probably 2010, 11, and just because they were getting started and kind of saw that they knew what they were doing it right. Dan Nothnagel is very open and very good guy, knowledgeable. So we approached them, and they were welcoming with open arms to tell us the reality of what goes into this. And thank goodness they did.
The investment. And time.
Yeah.
I'm sure the money is especially this place. They put up a brand new building here, and it's top of the line, dude. It's beautiful.
It's something that, like, when you have a passion or a dream, like, opening your own business, something you just goes right over your head. Until you start to actually pay some bills, acquire the equipment, then it's like, oh man, this costs a shitload of money.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Man. I've been there, done that. So I get that. That investment is that money is. It's not always easiest to come by. It doesn't matter how good your product is. Sometimes you don't have the funds. It's tough, especially with you need equipment.
You got to find the right people too. You don't want to be, you don't want to get into some deal where you're stuck with somebody who you're paying off the rest of your life. If you're gonna be paying somebody off the rest of your life, you might as well like them, right?
Exactly. That's true.
So we got a real dose of it, and we started. We weren't licensed. We didn't officially get licensed, but we went through the process. We were really close, and life kind of took over. We started building out it was basically a garage out in Manchester, and we were going to convert that into the production brewery, and we had a spot for a tasting room and all sorts of plans. We brought it to the town board. We got a variance out in basically an agro district, and we just kind of, it just wasn't, we couldn't make the next leap. We all had things going on. I started apprenticing at CB Craft Brewers down in Honeoye Falls, and I got a dose of what it really is like in brewery production. Before that, I was just a home brewer. We used to hold unofficial events. Shout out for Victor Brewfest. If anyone remembers those good old times, maybe we'll bring it back someday.
I was gonna say that might be fun. Let me see if we can find a spot. We can do it on the motorhome, dude.
All right.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Well, that was another idea. Since we had this whole idea, it was going to be Spacecraft Brewing Company.
Okay.
We were talking about a mobile brewery, or at least a mobile tasting room, where we'd roll into festivals, roll into parties, set up shop, hook up the kegs, and dispense, just like a normal distributor does,
Dude, if I had known you back then, that would have been a thing. That's actually one of the reasons I got this, is to go around to like festivals and craft shows and different things and like, make a couple things, and then like even if I have like other people I know that want to give me their product, like sell it. And then the other day I was just thinking about like, oh, let's put a mobile cafe in this thing.
Yeah.
Craft brewing. Now that's a good idea.
I've heard some pretty crazy ideas, and festival scene is, if you're at a festival and you're stuck there and you gotta pay double for a case of Budweiser, I don't know, if you had a little pop-up craft brew station, I don't know, might be an idea for the folks out there, right?
That's actually a really good idea, man. That's hilarious. I'll have to put that one on in the idea box. That's pretty good, man. I like that.
Somebody will do it.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's the right people,
All right, so had these parties. You started apprenticing. Did you apprentice because you wanted to just see the side of production? Did you apprentice just to get some like big scale experience?
Maybe I was off on the timing a little bit. So kind of all along. I was bartending at the time. We had the beginnings of the business. We were talking, it was like we were trying to figure out if this was plausible. Like, where is everyone in their life? Do we really want to do this? We were homebrewers, we didn't really know what we were getting into. So I started to get really into the actual production, professional brewing side. So I got a real look of like what it takes. We didn't even have the right equipment at that point. We were filling Cornelius kegs, corny kegs, and bottling our own beer. And then, bam, a week later, I'm seeing how, I'm thrown into it. I'm working on a bottling line and I'm washing kegs, and it's like, holy crap, I don't even know the beginnings of what I'm doing here.
Right.
So that was kind of the first dose of reality.
Yeah.
It was like, well, we can still do this. This is the dream.
It's fun.
CB Craft Brewers is known for contract brewing.
Okay.
So in the back of my head, I'm like, man, maybe if we get big enough and we make a name for ourselves, maybe even CB could contract brew for us.
Sure.
Get our product out there, kind of like how Three Heads did.
Yep, why not?
It's like, man, they follow that model. Why not? That looks good.
Clearly works. It works,
It works. It's sometimes you just need a chance, to really get your name, your face out there, and if people like the product, you can run away with it.
That's very true.
So I wouldn't say it derailed, but just life changed. Things happened, and it was, you could see spacecraft dwindling, but on the other hand, professionally, my brewing career was blossoming. So
you gotta take that advantage and take it and ride with it at least.
Over let's say a 4-year process, I went from, we'll say, an apprentice to brewer's assistant, or cellarman, then brewer's assistant to brewer to lead brewer, and then eventually at the end of that I was a head brewer at CB Craft Brewers. And I mean, I have to give accolades to them and Mike Alcorn, because gave me a chance, and I mean, I really learned pretty much as I could in a very short amount of time about what brewing takes. I was really dedicated back in the day, where I felt like my recipe creation was kind of something that I created myself, but as far as the work, I didn't, when I started, I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Yeah.
So it took a while, and you're never done learning, especially with brewing, because there's always new techniques and new processes. But I felt like from a fundamental standpoint, I learned all that I could from good old CB Brewing School.
Hey man, you know what? That's awesome that someone gave you a chance at it. I mean, you worked your way up pretty quick. I mean, 4 years, that's quick, man. That's awesome.
And I loved it. It was good people. Beer was good. I was proud of what I was doing. I got to put my own recipes out. CB was definitely, everyone sticks together, because I lived either in Rochester or a ways away, so driving to Honeoye Falls, that takes it out of you a little bit, but it's good organization, and it's where the roots took. So I always have respect for CB.
Yeah, you have to, where the roots, where you start, you have to have respect for that, and they taught you a new skill that you can take anywhere you can do anything with now, and you also know that, like I kind of was saying the other day, that you don't want to go on that big of scale. You might not necessarily want to own it anymore. You might just want to brew and do the smaller, micro brews. I guess they're like single batch brews.
Yeah, like a nano size, kind of nano brew. So from that perspective, I always look at whether I'm home brewing, whether I'm doing a 1-barrel batch, or even a 30-barrel batch. You can always improve on it. It's always you always have a grand idea, and it takes a while to hone it in. That's why home brewing is very important, even for professional brewers.
Do you ever home brew now, or you just stick to?
I do. I try. It's been a while, to be honest, but I do. I try to do small batch. Not even a barrel, a half barrel. The old spacecraft pilot system, we'll call it. And at this point, I kind of do the wackier stuff. I'll do some wild ales or sour beers, something that I can brew it. Say on a Sunday, 6-hour day, let it go, then inoculate it with some bugs and let it get the funkatize. Get the funky going and kind of let it work for a year and a half. And then I also still have home brewer friends who I have sour ale projects going, that are 3 years deep and, still waiting, put them into a cask or something to get some oak character.
That's interesting. Okay. So do you store that at the house or wherever there, just whoever's home brewing, you guys?
Oh yeah, it drives roommates or drives a girlfriend crazy. There's always a section for the homebrew stuff. Truth be told, a lot's being stored at my parents' out at the Bluebell Hop Yard out in Farmington, New York. That was another business venture that I guess I got my father into.
I was gonna say, did they have that before you got into beer? Or was
it was similar timing. Okay. It was a good idea. It was why not? Hearing about these hop yards popping up. What does it take? And man, we did not know what it took. That's a story on its own. A hop yard. We could bring in my father, and he'd tell you the harsh truth of the hop farming business.
I'm sure that's a lot. Any farming is how it works. So.
Yeah, that's what we underestimated. Hop yards are hop farms. It's farming, so there's no joke about it. You got to spend the time. You got to be out there. You got to spray. You got to cut them back. You got to train them.
So it's almost like it's not a fruit, obviously, but it's almost like it sounds like you would a fruit farm. You have to trim the apple, like an apple tree back. You have to grapevines. You have to train.
Yeah, it's a process. It starts. Say you have they're rhizomes. They're rootstock. So basically, they're perennials. They come back every year. They grow up a vine. It's called a vine. It's weird. It's a standalone. When you're considering hops, it's vines. Everything else is vines. They grow vines. But they come back every year. But it is a process. So in the spring, you have to train them. As they start to shoot out, they have first bull shoots. You have to cut those back. So you crown them. Then you start again and you train them. You hang your core, which is a process. The way we do it is we have a tractor, and then we have this kind of wacky built-out staircase on a trailer, I guess we'll call it.
Right.
So that's something too. So somebody's up 20 feet in the air training them, and that's just the spring. Yeah. You got your core, then you have to train them for the next couple months. Then you go to spring, that's all summer, and then you have to harvest them, and it's... Like I said, this could be its own episode.
But it's cool you have most brewers probably don't have that experience of going from seeing how they're grown, how they're harvested to, I know we talked a couple weeks ago, your dad sold them wet, not dry, or something along those lines, right?
Yeah. So if he can, we try to get rid of them as wet hops or fresh hops. So we'd pick them, and then the same day, ideally, they'd be brewed with. You get different flavors out of the hops and plus it saves, cuts out the process of drying them, packaging them, pelletizing them. So all in all, it's if we can sell them and get a good price for them, that's the way to go.
Makes sense. Absolutely. Why not?
But without a doubt, I mean, I do have a look into different facets of the brewing world, I guess I'll say. And
Sorry. Go ahead.
well, I just lucked out in that way, you know. I kind of, everything was happening at the same time. It was kind of my life was taking this path. My father, he joined a couple partners, and then one of the partners left and all that. But still have the hop yard, and every year it's like we get a harvest, and
That's really cool.
it's tough work, but it makes it worth it at the end of the day when you see the product, and it's pretty wild.
Do you think that makes you appreciate what you do and like what you're buying from other places and companies and stuff like that? Put a little more thought into what you're actually buying. You know.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's, to be honest, it's tough to compete. I mean, our product in New York State is good, but Yakima Valley and Washington and the West Coast, even Oregon, the hop quality is just amazing. They have all these breeding programs where they're making new strains. It's like they're on the same level as marijuana.
I was just gonna say that's what it sounds like when you're like new strains. I'm like, what? Wait a second.
I guess it would be varieties.
Strains, varieties. It's all
Yeah, you know, exactly. You know, well, they're cousins, anyways. You know, they come they come from the cannabis family, anyways. There's some kind of connection there.
All right. So now that we're talking about that, what about CBD beer, weed beer? Like, is that a thing anyone's trying to do?
I mean, it's happening.
Is it?
It's definitely happening. You see the big companies, the Coors Millers and the Ambev.
Really, they're getting into that.
They're buying up rights for CBD infused beers.
No way.
So it's only a matter of time until there's THC infused beers.
Sure, absolutely.
Not to toot my own horn.
I was gonna say, have you
Back to
ever-
the homebrewing days before I was a professional. I may have been known to make a THC beer here and there.
All right.
Who knows? Maybe they'll make a rise once it's legal in New York State, of course.
Right, because now that you're a professional, you got to keep it that way.
Exactly.
So CBD though, that's legal.
Yep.
Can CBD be infused in beer? It's now in like drinks and stuff like that. But like, what about? I mean, you said the bigger companies. Do you know of any of the smaller companies? Or
I haven't seen any local. Last time I was on the West Coast, like you were saying, I've seen soda pop, I've seen sports drinks,
kombucha.
yeah, kombucha. I personally have not seen a beer. Dave Brooks, what's up, brother? But it's only a matter of time, you know. If CBD oil was cheap enough, I'd say Three Heads would probably step into that realm.
Well, that's what I was gonna say too. You have to have. I would assume you probably have to have a lot of it to put in. The size that you do here, but the smaller batches.
That's a thought, you know. You get the danker flavors out of the hops. You could create your own weed beer in a way, you know. But you're getting the health properties, so you don't almost have like a beer elixir tonic, a health tonic, I guess you'd say. Some would say it's a little, contradictory, but if you have,
It's still healthy.
if you're just winding down for the night, you could.
It's perfect. You get a little like indica blend in there eventually too.
Yeah.
You got that set up. It's nice, just mellow out your day.
Exactly.
All right.
I think we're onto something here.
I think so too. We're gonna talk about that off the podcast, though. I think.
Yeah,
You can't
yeah.
give too many ideas away on this.
Exactly. I mean, it's out there for the public. You can't have people taking all of our ideas.
Alright, cool. Alright, so now let's get to talk about some brewing. Let's talk about life, man.
Yeah.
What obviously you were outdoorsy if you wanted to go the conservation route, DC, like you still get outdoors, I mean, I hike a lot and everyone's hiking with beer. It's so funny. Up in the Adirondacks, there are people like cracking beers on the top of the mountains. I'm like, oh, what are you guys drinking? They're like, oh, we're in Vermont, so we grab this beer, and grab that beer. And it's cool to see. Do you correlate beer and outside or anything?
Of course. I think that's one of the biggest factors into why cans are back and better than ever. Everyone wants their packaged beer in a can, it seems. You got your standards. Of course, you're going to sell a lot of bottles at your grocery stores. But when it comes down to it, would you rather have a couple bottles clanking around or a 4-pack of 16-ounce cans that you can put in your backpack? They're going to be fine. You're not going to break glass.
I'm a can fan no matter what. Even like when I drank like Coke or Pepsi as a kid, it was like the cans just tasted better. So beer in a can just tastes
So it's
better.
natural. I mean, you got the aluminum, and you're fine. It's canning in the brewing industry's come a long way as well. There used to be a negative stigma for canned beer. Maybe it was the product that they were putting into the cans that might be the issue. But now when you look, I mean, it's not even close. The beers you want to drink are usually in a can.
Yeah.
It's just the truth,
I was gonna say, I never really even thought about that, but that's very true. Like the more specialty, the beers that everyone wants to get after all.
There is one exception when you're talking about like a 22-ounce bomber, something that can age, barrel aged, or even a big like barley wine, some strong ale.
Yeah.
There's something about that. It's almost, at this point, it's getting towards nostalgia, but the bigger beers, the darker beers, they fit in the bottle. But that's if you have a cellar. Maybe that goes back to like kind of a wine type of stereotype, I guess. That would be the one exception for me. But
So like the darker beers you want kind of in a bottle.
yeah, it lends itself better to that, I would say. Whereas, IPAs, the hot new England style hazies, those I think you're going to want in a can. You're going to drink them fast anyways. You don't need to worry about aging them. Drink them as soon as you get them. Fresher the better.
That's very
It's
true.
tough because you want to save beers, but there is a threshold. Hops will dissipate.
Yeah, I'm sure. Absolutely. Just like anything. When anything goes bad, the fresher it is, the better it is.
Food, drink, everything. Yeah. So as far as outdoors, I mean, I grew up on a farm, as I alluded to earlier. I mean, I would consider myself a city boy in some senses because I went to school in Buffalo and I live in Rochester now. But I was born in the city as well. Moved out to Farmington, Victor area. Went and lived with my great-grandfather at the time, and he had an old dairy farm from back in the 60s, 70s, maybe early 80s. So
Was it active when you guys were living there?
no. So it hadn't been active since the 80s. So actually, when we started the hop yard back up, that was kind of paying respects to the farm that it was. If you ask around, Mr. Bowerman, he ran a pretty tight ship there.
Oh, all right. I lived on a dairy for a little while when I lived in Jersey, and crazy farms, man.
It's wild. I'm glad I bad to say, but I'm glad I didn't have to work on the dairy farm. It's a lot of work, and I really respect that.
Yeah.
Most of the farmers that come and collect grain are usually dairy farms, and you just see these guys. They work their asses off. It's
It's a hard life, man. It really is. Especially in upstate New York in the winters and stuff.
Yeah.
It's rough.
just to assure that quality product. It's when I talk with those kind of farmers, we're speaking the same language because it's a product that's going right to the public. You can't mess around with that.
You really can't. Definitely not. So, I was gonna say, just hiking, stuff like that. I know you went out west to...
I did. I've recently taken a couple trips, and the most recent trip has been, it definitely sticks out because it was a really good trip. So I went to Washington, and I kind of took a tour of...
So where'd you go in Washington? You went all around, do you do like Olympia National Park?
No. So we
Where'd you guys go?
didn't do the Cascades, but we did Mount St. Helens. We took a trip over there, and that was cool. We didn't do all that much hiking there, but we got a good sense of it. And until you really, we drove up and we hiked a little bit. It was like a big staircase, but you get a sense, and just the way they have the parks laid out, it's so beautiful, and you realize that this thing erupted, and there was people with their houses. There used to be a hotel there, and this was their life. There was the geologist who stuck through it to get the readings. He lost his life, and then there's a couple holdouts, and it was just like, what else would they do?
Where are you going? And it's wild to think that someone just stayed there just for research, knowing that like we're not gonna make it.
Yeah. It'd be amazing and also soul crushing to hear those final accounts. He had his journals, and most of that was protected, and they were able to keep that. So that's just something to think about. Dedication when it comes to stuff like that. That's wild. But it gained a respect for that. So when we were there, we actually also checked out the Ape Caves, which was one of the biggest North American lava tubes. So it's basically like a cave. You go underground, and it's all hardened magma. It's where the lava is just blasting through, and it created these tunnels. It's
hanging out, walking through it.
Yeah, it's like, and St. Helens still active, so I mean, my girlfriend, she wasn't too keen on it. She
a little nervous.
Yeah, I was hanging out with her mother actually that day, because she doesn't have the claustrophobia as much, but we kind of wanted to see it. There's a little structure called the meatball. It's like where this big piece of lava just hardened, and it looks like this meatball stuck in a crevice. It's kind of cool. And then as you go deeper, it just keeps getting smaller and smaller, where it just hardened, and it's kind of the final stage. You can go through. It's all this like rubble and rocks and stuff. So that was cool.
That's a cool experience.
That was a pretty cool area of Washington. But I think the most rewarding and best trip was when we did Mount Rainier.
Yeah.
So we didn't do a summit or anything crazy like that. I'm not in that kind of hiking shape.
I talked to Jess about it. I think she said you guys made it up to like halfway or something like that.
Yeah, a little before Camp Muir. So I think that's where, like, if you make it to Camp Muir, it's like you're all in. Like, that's where people are going for summit. And it's a tough mountain. What I heard, we were talking to hikers all day, and a bunch of people that did it. You gotta find the perfect season. It's gotta be the right conditions. And that day when we did what was it? It's either the Sunset Trail or Moonrise. So it was nearly an 8.5 mile complete loop with nearly a half-mile elevation change. So I was feeling it. You could even start to feel the altitude a little bit.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's a big elevation change, especially like being up in the mountains and then hiking up that high. That's a good hike.
It is. It's like you totally underestimate it. I wouldn't say I'm like a really fit guy, but I can hike. If we're gonna do a couple miles, it's nothing. But
8 miles in elevation is a big.
I know. You do the whole loop, and even when you're coming down, you're like, whoa, man! I underestimated it.
Lightheaded.
Yeah. And you already start so high, so. But that was amazing. It's kind of the perfect level for the group I was with. We could really, like, there was a couple points where you had to just kind of power through it, but it was very enjoyable. A lot of hikers. Everyone was just same mindset.
That's what it's all about.
We could see across the way. It was wild. We didn't even need binoculars, but it looked like ants, climbing the mountain. They were probably a mile away.
It's amazing. Those mountains make you feel tiny.
Oh man, and it was so cool. We got to a point where you could see those guys there was all sorts of practice too. You'd see teams because they're getting ready. Like, these people are so dedicated, and I have such a respect after doing this for them. You see it on a movie or something, and it seems like it's all Hollywood and stuff. You got to trust these people with your life. people die there every year. It can be scary shit.
Yeah, especially like you said, like the time of year, the weather has to be so perfect, and you have to be prepared for anything out there. That's a different animal.
Weather can change on an instant. It's one of those moments where it's steep enough and it's tricky enough. It's a very technical mountain, is what everyone kept saying. That's what I heard. Must have been 10 times, just from different people too. It was very technical. I was like, maybe we'll just stay on our nice path here. There's a little snow cover. We can deal with that. We're ready for that.
When did you guys go? There was snow. What time of year was it?
So when did we go? Right before summer.
Okay. It's crazy how there's still snow there, right?
Yeah.
And it's getting warm here, and then you go out there and you go to that elevation and the snow, and you're like, wait a second, I'm not ready for this.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty great weather, actually. I mean, all things considered.
That's really awesome. It's jealous.
Hold on. It must. We were getting into summer because I think they were talking about how that was the last summit they were going to do, and they were surprised that people were trying it because it was kind of like during a melting process.
Oh yeah, like that gets muddy.
Sometimes I'm not all that great with time, places, people, or things, but we get through it. Yeah.
Hey man, I hear you. That's all right.
And I usually don't travel so much, and I've been on the West Coast so much. It's like blurring together. I was there last December. I went to Northern California, got to see the redwoods. That was just wild.
Dude, that's one thing I still haven't seen.
Oh man, do it. Do yourself a favor. I know it's tough. It's tough to get there because there's so much in California. You either come down from Oregon, right, or you go up from like San Fran, but still it's a freaking hike to get there.
It's so worth it though, man. I would do it in a heartbeat. I've been in San Francisco and I just didn't make it there.
That blew me away. So we did what I would call the Northwest Triangle. Started in Tahoe, Reno, drove pretty much diagonal across the state, got to the Redwoods National Forest area, went down the coast. I was enjoying California. It was a good place,
That's a heck of a trip, man. Good weather, good
stopped.
food.
I always had wanted to. Stopped into Russian River Brewing Co. One of the most famous craft breweries. Yep, they're known for Pliny the Elder and younger, and they have this amazing barreling program where, if you ever get a chance, if you see Russian River, just jump on it because to style and flavor-wise, it's going to be the best beer.
But I'm gonna have to make a special trip out west just for that.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I just, once again, this December heading back out west. I mean, it's like it keeps calling me. This time we have a wedding, so we're Lake Tahoe.
Dude, that Tahoe, Reno, even Reno, it's like way nicer than I thought. The mountain, it's beautiful, Reno. But then like you go just half hour, 40 minutes from Tahoe, like
you don't, you can't believe it. It's like it's the same town basically, but one is just the serene, like amazing, and then you get like your city, and if you like your gambling, I guess you can. It's kind of got everything in there,
Yeah, the mountains too. I mean, I was out there for like a weekend, and I cannot wait to go back. It's so awesome.
I heard there's some snow this year. Last year there wasn't too much, so I'm hoping to hit the slopes a little bit.
Oh, dude, my buddy was just there, and he got stuck on the road, and he had like hike up the mountain and then like the lifts open and stuff like that. But yeah, there's definitely some snow there right now. It's a lot of it. That'll be sweet. Do you ski, snowboard? Or?
I ski. Pretty out of it, but it's just because it's been a while. You never forget skiing. You pick it right back up.
That's like you with snowboarding. I went once last year, and I'd like to get out there more this year. But
I know that if I have one day to myself, that'll be what I'll try to do. Just hit the slopes. I haven't skied out there, and I've heard it's just a different world. And
fresh powder.
Yeah, exactly. and I'm confident enough in my skill. I wouldn't be worried about, and I would take it easy. I mean, maybe it's a little more than I expect.
Hey man, that's stuff. That would be sweet. When are you going out there?
Leaving next Thursday, actually.
Nice.
A week from now. Wow.
Look at that.
Holy crap.
You're like, oh man, I gotta get ready.
I know. Well, it's so crazy. We're gearing up here, getting ready for the holiday. Like, this is the final holiday push. Get all the beer out, brew a bunch of beer so we can have them fermenting in the tanks. Let us have a little vacation.
That'll be nice. Do all the brewers kind of take a couple days off, a week off?
Yeah.
That's good.
They do it really nice here. We have to check on things. Like here and there, you need to dry hop beer, or you need to crash a tank, or just it's processes. But there won't be any full brewing days or anything like that.
Oh, that's cool. That'll be nice to bring for you guys.
It'll be a good reboot. Not that we need it, but it's always nice to kind of recharge the batteries.
All right. Anything special coming up for the next year that you can talk about? What you thinking about even?
Well, I mean, beer-wise, we just have so many things coming out on the small system. We just brewed an orange blossom blonde ale that we put some orange blossom honey into. Talking about adding some puree or some orange flavoring, just something that's nice for this band, the Honey Smugglers. They've been good friends to Three Heads, and they always bring a great crowd. So we wanted to put a couple kegs out that people can really crush down. Something that'll be flavorful, nice, light. Drink a bunch of them. There's that. We're talking about making a margarita sour. We're talking, the gears are always turning in the IPA realm. That's, I believe, they kind of brought me on for the new style of IPAs here at Three Heads.
Yeah, I was gonna say because you had that first one going way back, the Strong Arm, that was a New England style IPA, which I hadn't even heard of until you had it here.
Yeah.
Which now I really like New England style IPAs. What? Do you like brewing IPAs? Do you like brewing other stuff? Like, what's your favorite?
Oh yeah, I mean, even going back to the spacecraft, space brew days. I mean, I'm a hophead through and through. It takes a lot. It's got to be very, very bitter for me to not even give it a chance. And there's the very subtle details to each different hop that I have so much respect for and I love. It's kind of one of the things that interests me about all the hoppy beers and the IPAs. But yeah, even going back to when I was with the other guys and CB, it was like IPA has been my thing. I try to perfect them. They're always different. You want to keep it interesting.
I was gonna say you make a hell of an IPA. That's for damn sure.
Thank you. That's always good to hear.
I'm excited to see what's coming up because, like I said, the guava one is the guava.
Yeah, we have the Guava Sutra.
Sutra milkshake.
Yep, Guava Sutra milkshake IPA. We actually just brought a bunch more out. So second batch 2. We're honing it in. It's what we got to do. We make it as enjoyable for everyone.
All right, what's your special? What's the special one you did for Thanksgiving?
Oh man, how could
you
I
not talk about this?
How could I not talk about the Imperial Bacon Breakfast Stout? The Hog Stout. So that was an old spacecraft recipe that I've been brewing probably the first batch I ever did was in 2010 or 9. That was one of the ones where it was like I had the idea of a big Imperial Stout, as you saw like KBS, CBS coming out from Founders, and I was like, how could I take that idea, not plagiarize it, but then make it my own. So I started getting crazy with bacon. The first batch I ever did, I cooked up 2 pounds of bacon, basically tried to, you got the paper towel on the plate, you're soaking up the grease, so you're not feeling bad about yourself. So I did that, and I kind of went to the extreme. I really tried to wring that bacon out. And I actually put it right in the fermenter. Yeah. So you have the 10 to 12% Imperial Stout leaching out the bacon flavor, extracting it, what have you.
Yeah.
And it all came to fruition. This time around, made it. It was a simple premise, different chocolate, different ingredients, but when it came down to it, I think I nailed it. To create the bacon flavor, I did a combination of smoked malt to give you that overall kind of the smokiness that you get out of bacon, whenever you make bacon, and I actually made an extract. So I took bacon and I did it right this time. Instead of just dropping a couple of strips of bacon into the fermenter, this time I took bacon and then I did the same process of removing as much fat as I could. But then I soaked it in spiricus, basically like an Everclear, and I let that soak for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Every once in a while, shake it up, add a little hot water just to kind of like maybe separate the fat a little bit more. Then I cooled it down, separated more fat, removed that. I actually got this separatory funnel or filter, like a little lab chemistry kind of, looks like an eye drop kind of conical.
Like a beaker type, not a beaker.
Yeah, like a little conical glass contraption.
Yeah.
And that really, that's what honed in my bacon liquor, we'll say.
Yep.
Dropped the sediment out. The top layer was the rest of the fat. I was able to remove that. And I was left with this just straight bacon rich, like the aroma was wild. It smelled just like bacon, and then you get a hit of like alcohol.
I was gonna say, did you try any of it?
Oh yeah, of course. I wasn't doing like, chugsies or shots, but I had, maybe a teaspoon.
All right, that's fair. You gotta try it at least.
It's good.
That's cool.
Since I spent all this time on this side project, I found out that people are making bacon liquor even in our own town.
Oh no.
So maybe the next time around I'll look into that instead of spending a month of my life on this side project.
That's awesome. Hey, at least you had a good time. You learned something new, I'm sure.
Oh, exactly.
That's cool.
Man, I tell you what it would be good for. Bloody Marys.
There you go. Dude, I will say that beer, I tried a little of it. Just the smell off it, literally, it smelled like, it had this great coffee smell to it. Then you sip it and you're like, man, it really just tasted like breakfast.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was a really, really good beer. But,
That's great. I mean, that beer is very complex. There's so many layers, and you really have to dig through it. That's what I was worried about with the bacon. It's like, one of the main factors that I put bacon in the name, so you got to be able to taste it. But there's maple syrup, there's coffee, there's chocolate. I put French oak chips that were soaked in Maker's Mark. It's like there's a lot going on in that beer, and it's a big imperial stout, so there's already that rich flavor that you get from a stout.
But it worked out. There wasn't too much going on. You tasted all the different layers, just from the smell to the first sip to once it went down. Then once you kind of it was in your mouth for a little bit. Like, you tasted all of those different flavors and layers of everything, man. All your beers have worked out that I've tasted so far. So, but that one was like just crazy.
That's awesome. I'm really glad. We'll see. That was one of those experimental beers that I always wanted to brew professionally. It didn't make all that much sense because it's all the ingredients and it costs so much and all that. But
right after Thanksgiving,
we did it. Yeah, exactly. We had the Black Friday day. We had the Majestic Barrel Aged Stout, which is so fantastic, and it was just it's the season for the dark beers. And I'm currently drinking one right now.
I was going to say, what are you drinking right now?
This is the Majestic, the barrel-aged Imperial Stout. It's timing's right, Going into the holiday season, it's
the one to go with?
Yeah.
All right, then I'll have to be my next beer then. All right, man. Well, dude, I appreciate the time, and I won't take up more of your time. It's been almost an hour, so appreciate it, man. Cheers.
Cheers. Great time, John Alex.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys caught some of those parallels between beer and life and kind of outdoors in life that Derek and I talked about, because I think everybody can learn a little bit something from everyone else. And this podcast is an example of that. Listening to Derek and re-listening to this podcast during the edit, I was like, oh man, like I didn't catch all of those parallels that we correlated to life. And so I'm really curious if any of you guys catch any. If you do, please comment on one of the social medias: Instagram, Bushwhack Podcast; Facebook, Bushwhack Podcast. Thanks.